the clock. Welcome to the Anacortes Planning Commission meeting of February 12th, 2025. Ms. Gleichman, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Mills.
Present.
Commissioner McCombs.
Present.
Commissioner Ryan.
Present.
Commissioner Martin.
Here.
Commissioner Stoneman. Commissioner Jaretsky.
Here.
Commissioner Courier.
Okay. Anybody want to make any motions about missing people? If not, we will move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda are minutes. No minutes at this time. Okay. Public comment. Does anybody in the public like to speak?
There's no one online.
No one online. Okay. We'll move on to item 5 is public hearings, and we don't have one tonight. So number 6A, other business. 2025 Comprehensive Plan Update, proposed amendments to the goals and policies in the capital facilities, utilities, elements, continued discussion. And we have Ms. Grage.
Thank you, Chair Martin, and good evening, everyone. I'm Libby Grage, Planning Manager in the Community Economic Development Department. I was trying to get this microphone closer to me. There we go. So I don't have to, okay. Is that okay? Can everybody hear me all right? Okay, good. Okay, and then put that down. So this evening, as you mentioned, the first item is a continued discussion on capital facilities element, goals and policies. At the last meeting, you'll recall that there were some questions about the proposed changes in level of service standards for the police services and fire and emergency medical services. And so I did reach out to the chiefs, and they provided some additional information, and that was in your packet. Unfortunately, they weren't able to attend this evening, so if there are specific questions that I might not be able to answer, I will need to relay those to the chiefs and maybe schedule a time for them to come to a planning commission meeting.
Are there questions from the commissioners? So seeing none, I did have one question, but I don't need to have the answer, I guess. Under the fire department, he mentions the NFPA standards on the first question and the second one, but where it comes down to effective response force, he says that it does not match any NFPA standard, but it's a reasonable compromise. It just made me curious about what that standard was, because he mentions it in the other ones, but not that. But it's not pressing, and he doesn't need to make a separate meeting just to answer that. It was a curiosity.
Okay. Well, maybe just an email will do, and I can pass it along to the
That would
commission.
be awesome.
Okay. I will do that.
Mr. McCombs.
Yeah, I just had, I guess, a kind of an observation or a comment. It seemed like both the Chief Harris memo and the Chief Floyd memo, they base their response time and their staffing on, or everything's, instead of there being a requirement that they staff to, they create a requirement based on what their staffing is, right? So it seems like it's backwards. And I understand there's resourcing shortfalls, but if there's a standard that they should be meeting in terms of being able to respond, or the number of patrols, the number of people that should be available for certain functions, shouldn't the city be trying to meet that staffing level so that they can meet those standards rather than adjusting the standards? I guess that's kind of a hypothetical, not a hypothetical question, but it's a question and observation that I made.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and I don't know that I'm comfortable answering in place of the chiefs, and so I'm happy to talk to them and get a response back to you.
And Mr. McCombs, I noticed that too, except for the police, he does mention the national standard in his first paragraph is 2.3 to 2.4 officers per 1,000, and the Anacortes standard is going to stay at 1.83 officers per 1,000, so better than the national average or the national recommended standard, whatever it is. So that seemed good to me.
Well, it's actually lower though, because you have a 1.83. Our
Oh,
current
yeah.
ratio is 1.83 per 1,000 rather than 2.3, right?
That's true.
So,
Yeah, it is
so it's
lower.
lower than the national. He's comfortable with that because he thinks he meets the minimum functions. And because one of the comments he makes is about population density. As the population density increases, he thinks that the ratio should increase
Right.
because he thinks there's more interaction between people, right? So that question I asked is not really a criticism of how they're managing their staff, but it may be how they're resourced, I think. So.
Thanks for
Fair
fixing the math. Mr. Ryan?
So with NFPA 1710, it's looking like it's a 4-man minimum per ladder unit, and he's saying 3. So, and there again with the density, and he's saying we're going to be at 90% or whatever that is. It seemed fine.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
That NFPA 1710 has a 4 firefighter per engine or ladder company is what it's saying, and our response here is that we're going to be running 3 firefighters. So just when that question was there.
Well, the question is a little bit further down. The question is about effective response force. Okay. I think we're all right. Yes, okay. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you for following up with that. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The next item that I wanted to bring up was a proposed update to one of the policies in the capital facilities element, goals and policies. And the changes are highlighted, so the changes from last time are highlighted. And basically the new policy, so this is under the support existing development and future growth, provide capital facilities and public services necessary to support existing and new development envisioned in the land use element. And there was this policy, supporting policy that said to accommodate new residential, commercial, and industrial development only when required facilities and services are available prior to or concurrent with development. And then concurrency means facilities are available within 6 years of construction of the new development. And our suggestion is to remove the specific residential, commercial, and industrial because really we want to apply the concurrency standards to all types of development and don't, want to get in an argument about whether something fits under commercial or industrial or institutional or something like that. So that was the thought with that. And then also adding a line here to refer or reference our concurrency management, concurrency review process that we currently have in our development regulations. So basically that is a process that happens during review of a development permit application where city staff route the application to all of the departments and services that are responsible for providing concurrency services and facilities. And they all look at, what their current level of service is supposed to be, what impact the new development will have on their facilities and services. And then they're able to kind of track, moving forward, where they are in terms of, growth and needed new facilities and services. And so I also added, just for more clarity, that for some of the concurrency facilities, like the utilities, water, wastewater, and stormwater, that concurrent with development means prior to actual use of the facilities. So when new development is happening, and there is the new development is going to cause the water system, to go below what the minimum level of service standard is, then the developer would be required to provide the facilities or, the improvements needed to bring the system up to level of service. Otherwise, the city could not approve the development permit application. So that's kind of how that works for wastewater, stormwater, and water. So the other services and facilities like transportation, police, and fire, and also parks and recreation, concurrent with development means that there's a financial commitment in place to complete needed improvements to meet the level of service or other strategies within 6 years of occupancy of the development. And a lot of that information is in the development regulations right now, but I thought it might make sense to have it in both locations. Did that make sense to folks? Okay.
Okay, Mr. Dretsky has a question.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of San Juan Passage. It took a long time to build that out. Is the 6 years start when the first homes are built and occupancy is granted to the first few, or is it when the project is completed and all, 200 homes have been completed?
That's a great question. I think that typically it would be once they have final plat and it's recorded, all of the facilities that they're required to put in are in.
So for the first home?
I'm not quite exactly sure how to answer that, but yeah, I think the preliminary plat approval, when we go through and review the development application, is when all of the deficiencies would have to be identified, and then approval would be conditioned on fixing those deficiencies.
Yeah, I like that way of doing it simply because of if the developer started the project and then because of the economy or because, other problems, the homes never got completed.
Yeah.
We wouldn't want to wait for the last homes because San Juan Passage is a great example. It took a long time because of the economic situation.
Right.
The project sat there for years.
Yeah, and in the meantime, other development is happening, but just 1 or 2 homes that aren't completed, within the time frame aren't going to make a huge difference on concurrency facilities in general.
Thank you.
It makes me think, like San Juan Passage or Portales, they have a whole bunch of different HOAs, and I wonder if that's, Project A is now complete, so they're, it's got all of the documents. That's a way of getting around that 6 years. I don't know. I just wonder.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think so. But
You don't think so?
yeah, I'm not sure if I completely understood the question.
Well, he's using San Juan Passage as a good example that took a long time to build that all the way out. But I'm wondering, for the sake of this, if the developer said, we're building out portion A, and this is now complete within the 6 years.
Yeah.
And here's the HOA, here's everything for this one, and then they start on Section 2, I don't know.
Yeah, there are, in the development regulations and the concurrency provisions, there's specific standards for developments that are proposed to be phased. So there are provisions made for how those are dealt with and when, you know, a concurrency determination expires and they have to start over.
And those were planned unit developments, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Mills.
I can shed a little bit of light on the example we're talking about. San Juan Passage was developed in 4 or maybe 5 phases, and the city approved the facilities build out phase by phase and the platting of the so that perhaps would break that into pieces, because it did take 11 years from the first to the last in that development. And then my perception from being involved in the HOA next door to Portales, they have, I believe, 3 HOAs, and they're associated with, you know, there's some townhomes and there's some residential, single family. So I think the HOAs are split by type of housing in that case.
Yeah, typically all the required facilities, so water, sewer, and storm, are in before final plat approval. So regardless of how long it takes for homes to build out, you know, that's already been addressed.
Okay. Any other questions for this capital facilities clarification, really?
Yes.
No. No questions.
Okay.
Okay.
And so I'd also, just on the capital facilities and utilities elements, which we've been discussing for the last 2 meetings, we did advertise a public comment period and a public hearing. So the public comment period is open right now, and the public hearing is scheduled for the next meeting, February 26, 2025 at 6 p.m. So if folks that are watching, which I'm sure there are many, want to comment on any of, or review the materials, or comment on any of the proposed changes to the goals and policies, they can go to anacortes.org. This is the website, and then there's a big button that says draft documents available for review and comment. Click on that, and that will take you to all of the comprehensive plan elements and all of the documents that have been released for public comment. Capital facilities and utilities are down here. And then you can send your comments to compplan@anacortesswa.gov. Thank you. All right, that's all I have on that item.
Okay. So we're moving on to item 6B, 2025 Comprehensive Plan Update, Housing Action Plan Strategies and Discussion continued and hopefully concluded.
I don't know about that. I hope so, but I think I still owe you a little bit more information before we can do that.
Okay.
But I do have a little bit of background to talk about before the commission gets into your discussion, if that's all right?
Sure.
Okay. Just for those that maybe haven't been following along and are joining us for the first time. So what we're talking about is the Housing Action Plan, and taking its recommendations and looking at what should be implemented into code changes. The Housing Action Plan purpose was to identify ways to encourage construction and preservation of both affordable and market rate housing, and in a greater variety of types, densities, and cost levels. And you can see there's some objectives for the Housing Action Plan to support the local economy and workforce, provide more homeownership opportunities, slow down and stabilize the rise in housing prices, and refining regulatory strategies to reduce barriers to housing development, which is really kind of what the Planning Commission is focused on right now. The Housing Action Plan was adopted in 2023, and City Council put on the docket for the 2025 Comprehensive Plan update consideration of the Housing Action Plan's strategies. City Council recommended certain items within the HAP and forwarded those to the Planning Commission so that the Planning Commission could review those and make recommendations on which ones should continue on and into code amendments. The Makers Architecture, Makers Urban Design and Architecture, I can never remember which way that goes, did come to a planning commission meetings on the August 28th and September 11th, and then there was one more, but the ones in August and September were focused on the Housing Action Plan. And then the Planning Commission decided to divide into teams to review and make recommendations on the actions. And then finally, in November and then in January, the Planning Commission teams have been reporting out and discussing the HAP strategies and which ones to move forward with. So here we are tonight. You planning commissioners all know this because you've been working with it, but this is the document that you've been using to track the recommended changes from the HAP, and it's got the item number, HAP recommendation number, that ties back to the actual language within the Housing Action Plan. So if you want to take a look at what the detailed recommendations are, you can do that by referencing the number in the HAP. To hopefully help with the discussion and kind of trying to put all of the pieces into one place so you don't have to reference quite as many documents, staff did go ahead and develop draft amendment proposals. So this is the Anacortes Municipal Code applicable sections, copied, pasted, and then the HAP recommendations implemented through strike through underline in the document. And also, prior to each potential change is a little blue box with an I in it, and that gives you, this one's a bad example, but that gives you the HAP strategy number if you want to read more about what that was. And then if there's this is a mandatory requirement or a mandatory change because of a state law, or it's required related to a state law, then we tried to put a symbol in there to reference that. I think that's all I have to say about that, unless somebody has questions about how we formatted that document. Did it make sense? Okay.
Okay.
That's all the background I have, and I'm not sure how we want to move through the recommendations. I can pull up that document if you'd like, and we can just pick up where we left off. Or I'm not sure if there was the chair had an idea for how we wanted to move forward.
I think just pick up from where we left off. I
Okay.
do have a couple questions, though.
Sure.
I noticed one of our community members made a comment a while ago that the Growth Management Act, his comment was, the Growth Management Act does not require greater density for communities under 25,000. And I didn't have a chance to look that up to see if that's true or not.
So there's a, I don't remember the number, but there was a housing bill passed within the last year or two that does require increased densities in urban growth areas and allowing for more units on lots. That does apply to jurisdictions that are 25,000 people or more. And so that particular law does not apply to Anacortes. So I mean, I guess not knowing which comment that was, I think generally that sounds like it's probably true.
Okay. And at the last meeting, and please, Ms. Gray, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that our task, or at least the frame, the focus that I use as I'm looking at these recommendations, we want to hone down to help the city council by saying these are the ones that are going to have the most impact. So the questions that I ask myself is, first of all, will this increase density? That first question may or may not have a real carry a lot of weight if it's not something that is required, and if it's not required, maybe it doesn't hold as much weight. But what I looked at is, does it increase density? Question number one. Would it tend toward more affordability? Number two, because that definitely is what we're trying to do. And question number three is really upon us as commissioners. Would this be something that our community would accept? And I think that's an important question to look at as well, particularly because we, in the past few years, have, we meaning the city, not us particularly, have made some pretty significant changes to zoning, and as a result, we've seen different kinds of building going on, which I'm not making a judgment that that's good or bad, just that it is different. So thinking about our community would be the third thing. So does this proposed change increase density? Does the proposed change promote more affordable housing? And is it something that our community will accept and appreciate? Comments from the commissioners on those thoughts? Mr. McCombs.
I have a comment. I guess the move towards increased density, I guess it's one that sometimes is necessary, right? But it's also, I think there is something that people appreciate about Anacortes is it is a small town, right? And so if we turn downtown Anacortes into something that looks more like Seattle or Portland, I think a lot of people here are not going to like it. And so there's a certain quality of life that comes without that density, without having really high density in downtown and high congestion. So I think there's places where it makes sense, but I think we need to use that very carefully so that we're not disrupting the quality of life that I think the majority of the citizens here in Anacortes appreciate.
Thank you. Mr. Dretsky.
I think almost the impossible task is to accomplish all three of those things.
Yeah.
Increase density, bring the cost of the units down, more units you can get on a piece of land if land prices don't go up because of it, may not make the people in the neighborhood happy. So you might be able to accomplish two and suffer through the third one. Again, it may be very, very difficult to do all three.
The other thing in the back of my mind is our own population, the senior, the large number of seniors that are in our population.
Careful.
As it relates to density, sometimes means stairs, and that's something in the back of my mind also as we look at these. All right.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
What is the status of the HAP in terms of of the city council? And where are they in the approval process of the HAP?
The Housing Action Plan, it's been adopted by the city council. It was in 2023.
Okay, I guess these changes that we're talking about, these recommendations, what's the status of those with the city council? Is this something they've already reviewed and made decisions on, or is this still under,
So
review?
sorry to interrupt you. So the city council docketed consideration of the HAP recommendations as part of the 2025 comprehensive plan update process. Subsequent to that, it was recognized that we weren't going to be able to do all of them, or maybe don't want to do all of them. And so there was an effort by the council planning committee to look at all of the strategies and make recommendations on which ones they felt like would have the, biggest bang for the buck, or that were, going to be more, potentially implemented more easily. And those recommendations from the council planning committee were taken to the full city council, which accepted those recommendations. And then those recommendations were forwarded to the planning commission. And that's what you have before you now. What you are working on is looking at those and trying to give a recommendation on which ones should continue moving forward in the process. Did that help? So city council, there is still a full public process once we determine which recommendations you would like to move forward with. We will develop a code change proposal, which I've done a draft, which you have in your packet. And so we'll still be working on amending that, tweaking that based on commission direction. And then that would be publicized for public comment, public hearing, and then finally a planning commission recommendation to city council, who would then have their own adoption process. So lots of process still before it gets back to planning or city council.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I am on page, well, at the end of page 39 of 39, the recommendations to consider that Ms. Grage has up on the computer.
Sorry, I don't have the packet numbers, I just have the...
That's okay. We don't either, actually.
Okay.
I'm looking for them, but we don't have them.
Well, I think, so we made it to... I think we made it to single-room occupancy housing, or the co-living housing, last time, and I had indicated that there was some new guidance that had come out regarding co-living housing, and that I was going to take a look at that and come back with some more detailed recommendations for the commission. I have not had time to complete those, and so I would recommend that we skip over that one this time.
Okay, we're going to skip over 2.1.9.
Same with
right?
supportive housing.
Okay, so next time. Okay. And same with 2.1.10. And 2.3 is also
accessory dwelling units. So that is also a big topic with, state mandated requirements that'll need to change, but there's also some local, policy options to consider. And so that is another one that we are working on drafting those recommendations for council. There were no specific, for the commission, That housing action plan did not contain any specific recommendations for that, and the state law, the new law came out after the HAP. So there wasn't really anything to go on, and so we're kind of still working on those.
Okay. So the next one, Mr. Mills and I are on, which is 2.4.1. And I really did appreciate that you gave us some draft development language for that. I find what page, and that is on page 9 of 39. And this one is the tough one.
Yeah.
Go
What I
ahead.
found myself doing as I was reviewing this material, I found the draft materials up front very helpful.
Yes.
But I did find myself cross-referencing back and forth between the matrix that we've been working with and this material.
Yep.
And for instance, 2.4.1, if you go to pages 15 and 25 of 61 in our packet, there's the supporting information of how that drafts out. Page 12 of 61, and, I'm sorry, page 15 of 61 and page 25 of 61 are both pertinent to 2.4.1. So it's almost better to look at page 25, or page 15 and page 25 than it is to look at the matrix at this point, because it fleshes it out into what's really proposed.
So I have numbers, you're saying page 25 of 61? Oh, I see.
15 and 25 of 61.
I see. Or 19 and 9 of 39.
Thank you.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so 9 is the matrix, and then 19 is the
Zone
the
specific.
zone. Okay, so these are the
Tying in the
specific.
zoning,
Right.
the lot size and the dwelling unit sizes.
Yeah,
Right. Yes, they work together. Which one would you like me to leave it on?
I think leave it on page 9 for now.
Okay.
Yes, I agree.
What do you want to say about this, Mr. Mills?
Well, conceptually, I gave my little speech, I think, last meeting about we can change the rules, but at the end of the day, it's the market forces that determine what will get built. And I'm saying that absent of subsidization and by government agency. But conceptually, I only have a few comments on this page. I look at the HAP strategy 2.4.1 line that is lot size for duplex, minimum square feet. And I thought I saw on page 25 that the R2 lot size was 7,500 feet, and the matrix here is showing 9,000 square feet. So trying to understand why those two wouldn't be the same number.
Looks like it's the recommendation is to change R2 from 9,000 to 7,500.
Not on page 9 of 39. It's leaves it at 9,000. If you look at page 19 of 39, it says the R2 zone, a
Oh, yeah.
duplex may be located on a lot that is at least 7,500 square feet when all the units have less than.
Yes. So I sort of struggled with how to show this. So in the R2 zone, the minimum lot size for a single family is 7,500. The minimum lot size for a duplex, a standard size duplex, so with no unit no unit size maximum, is 9,000 square feet.
Right.
With a small duplex, or whatever it ends up being called, where you would have limited or maximum size per unit. So theoretically, that would help with, the duplex, fitting in better with the neighborhood. You have limited unit size. So if you have, a maximum 1,000 square foot unit, then your total duplex is only 2,000 square feet, or 2,000 square feet floor area, which is, consistent with a single-family home. And so the thought was, by limiting the unit size, potentially that could help on a smaller lot to fit in with the neighborhood.
I think I understand what you're trying to accomplish there, and I think the confusion can be fixed by on page 19 of 39, 2A, R2 zones, if it says a small duplex, I think that's the distinction on page 9, is between call it a regular duplex or lot size for duplex versus a lot size for a small duplex.
Yeah,
So if you go
thank
back.
you, yeah.
Yeah, if you
Right.
just insert the word small in 2A on page 19 of 39, I think that fixes me.
Just another question as we were wrestling with this, still has to do with Old Town. And why, if we look on the charts, Old Town is still left off as far as reducing any sizes.
That's correct. I don't recall if the Housing Action Plan had specific recommendations for the Old Town zone related to duplex minimum lot size. I don't think it did. And so that's why it's not shown here, but that is, certainly within the Planning Commission's purview, or, to make a recommendation that be adjusted. So I wouldn't say that anything's off the table.
Yeah, if we are going to adjust, and I appreciate the way that you did this actually with, again, my question about, will it make this more affordable? And when you put the size of the square feet of the duplex in there, it seems to me that could definitely make it more affordable for people. And also the third question, would it fit with our community feel? I think that is a step in the right direction. What seems wrong to me, and it seems, I don't know why it's been left out every time, but almost every time we make changes to all of the residential zones except usually Old Town. And we've talked about that before, that for all intents and purposes, Old Town is more like an R3 zone.
They have access to all the amenities.
Yeah, I agree, yeah, R3 or R2, and I noticed in the matrix on page 9 that the first several categories, the lot size for Old Town matches up with R2A, actually. And then we get down to the lot size for small duplex and additional lot size for needed additional for attached dwelling units, and we're blank in terms of any change. To your point, it seems like we should parallel either the R2A or the R3 in the Old Town criteria.
Mr. McCombs.
Is there a special consideration for Old Town besides just the unique character of Old Town, or is there some infrastructure or other reason why you wouldn't treat it like other residential areas?
There are, more than a decade ago, before my time, 15 plus years ago, there was an effort to create some design standards, and that was, kind of the first time the city had any design standards for any particular area. But yes, so there were design standards applied to the Old Town area to, I think the intent was to make sure that, new development was consistent with, some of there are some historic residences there, a lot of homes aren't, historic or don't seem to have anything historically significant about them. But there are requirements for modulation of buildings if it exceeds a certain length. There's some standards about height, where, the taller you get, the more setback is needed from the side property lines. So there are some special standards that do apply. That's not to say that those couldn't be looked at, as well. I'm not sure, if they've been accomplishing their purpose over the last 15 years or not. But other than that, it is, Old Town is a great place, and it's close to downtown, and it's close to amenities, and, it's sort of the type of area where, it would be, people want to live there. So, yeah.
I think the question is spot on in terms of it's the look, touch, and feel of the area is governed by the design standards, not the size of the dwellings.
Absolutely.
And so I think we can leave the look, touch, and feel to the design standards while we focus on size and lots and dwellings. The size of the lots are probably already pretty much determined. I don't think there's any developable land left in that area. There's probably redevelopment land.
No, there's no large lots that could, be subdivided that I'm aware of. But, it's primarily made up of the old platted lots from the, original plat of Anacortes that are 3,000 square feet. And then, people bought, 3 or 2.5 of them and put homes on them. So, there is a possibility that there would, if I think the commission did make a recommendation that small lot, single family, I think that's in here, be allowed in the Old Town zone. So, there's a possibility that, somebody that has a 9,000 or large, 12,000 square foot lot could, maybe hasn't built on a part of it, and they could segregate that off and build another unit or have another lot. So, I think there is still potential for infill, is what I'm trying to say.
But infill would have to meet design standards.
Mr. Ryan?
Yeah, and so it sounds like, to specify that the term Old Town is identified under that for purpose of, to reduce argument. If we go, hey, we can do this, no, you can't, it's Old Town. So I'm wondering if that wording needs to be in there, the term Old Town as included.
I can't hear you. I'm so sorry.
No, just the term Old Town being in that, so this way it reduces argument, especially in the building department when they come in, well, you can't do that, this is Old Town. And no, it's not. It's falls in under Anacortes altogether, and because people like to exclude that, just from the mentality of Anacortes and being around the area, there's a thought pattern and a reduced argument to define that Old Town is included in that.
Are you saying that the name of the zone?
Yeah, yes. Is it?
Yeah, there is a specific area that is zoned Old Town, and that's yeah. I can,
So, getting back to our recommendations, this is by far, by the way, by far the most difficult, I think, at least for me it was. Mr. Mills, are you saying that the chart on page 9 for the row that says lot size for small duplex, are you saying make that the same as R2A, so from 7,500 to 6,000? Is that what you were saying?
R2A, I think, is 7,500. R3, which was the category you first mentioned, is 6,000, is recommended to go to 6,000.
But if we kept for the lot size for duplex minimum, that row stays at 7,500. The next one down, lot size for small duplex, make that one 6,000.
Yes, that would be my thought.
Good, because that would be my thought too.
so, just to repeat, you're saying to add a 6,000 square feet
Correct,
here in
right
this
there.
cell.
Which would mean that we would modify the zone-specific standards to include Old Town.
And I would take the next step, which is the next line down where it's categorized an additional lot size needed for additional attached dwelling unit beyond duplex. Again, I would mirror the R2A or R3 with 1,500 square foot in the Old Town column.
That makes sense to me.
So, just flagging that that may require some changes to the comprehensive plan, the future land use designation, where it talks about expected, development type in the Old Town zone, which is fine, but just noting that we would need to take a look at potentially making a change to the comp plan to make this change.
Or
And-
conversely, that column would have to have an NA there then, because if it's not allowed, if that type is not allowed, then it's a moot point as to the square footage, and that would just be designated as not applicable.
Well, interestingly, that third row down that says additional lot size needed for additional attached dwelling unit, that's interesting as well, because we don't really have all the ADU regulations, but we're sticking that in there. And I guess for me, attached is an important caveat in this situation, and duplex is an important caveat as well, because I would see that could be easily changed from duplex to triplex and then not be palatable. But as long as it's duplex, and again, we are talking about an attached ADU, I think the community could live with this.
So I want to make sure that I understood that. So inserting the word attached there, the minimum lot size required for an additional dwelling unit beyond a duplex. Yeah, it is interesting how the accessory dwelling unit regulations will come into play, isn't it?
Right.
Because that's not, as it's written right now, what's intended, because there is no minimum lot size for a duplex, or sorry, for an accessory dwelling unit. If you have a single-family home, you can have an accessory dwelling unit. And likewise, under the new regulations, in anywhere that allows a single-family residence, we have to allow 2 accessory dwelling units, and there are different configurations that they can be in. They can be
Right.
attached to the home, attached to each other, detached. So I guess I'm just trying to say that some more thought needs to go into that, and we haven't figured that out yet. So that this will
Right.
kind of have to be a moving, a fluid document.
Right,
Yeah.
yes.
For now.
This one might need to be revisited, for
Does-
sure.
Does that row about additional lot size, does that just go away with the new state law about accessory dwelling units then? Because you can't restrict that by law?
I think we do have, I'm going to have to come back with an answer to that, because I think once we get down so small, like 25, I think there's a threshold where, the city can say, no, you can have 1 ADU, but not 2. The ADUs are also subject to the rest of the zoning standards, so like maximum lot coverage, they would still have to comply with that. Setbacks, there are some adjustments for setbacks that we'll have to integrate, and height as well. So there's some things that we just have to do, but others, that we'll have some choice over. So, I look forward to bringing back recommendation on how we look at that and that future discussion.
Okay, so for now,
Yep.
2.4.1, we are okay with, based on the chart that you provided in the regulations, page 9 of 39, with the change for Old Town. The lot size for small duplex under Old Town would be 6,000 square feet, and the row that says additional lot size needed for additional attached dwelling unit for Old Town will say 1,500. And for the zone-specific standards on page 19 of 39, there would be 2 changes. One on A, to A, add the word small, and we would add another letter. I don't know if it would be a new A or what, a D or whatever, and it would express the change for Old Town. And then for now, that one is put to bed.
Yes.
Okay. And that was the toughest one.
I'm sorry, I need to make sure that I am understanding. So the adding the 1,500 square feet for additional attached dwelling unit beyond a duplex would indicate that, to me, that we are intending for a triplex to be permitted. Is that accurate in the Old Town Zone?
I think what we're intending to do, and I'm just speaking for myself, is mirror Old Town regulations there with R2A.
Okay. So then, in that case, yes, up to 4 attached units if the units are limited in size.
Beyond duplex.
Because that's, if we go to the permitted uses, oops. We have, so here's Old Town. We've added the P in for the small lot, single family. Cottage housing is not permitted in Old Town. A duplex is permitted, but then we don't have Ps in the triplex or townhome up to 4 attached units. So that would be a change that would have to go along with that. with the with mirroring the R2A standards. Does that make sense?
I don't like it.
Pardon?
I said I don't like it.
You don't like it?
I think we're back to number 3. Will the community accept it?
Yeah,
And the answer is no.
I agree.
I mean, if you had a 10,000-foot lot, based on the math, you could put in 4 units.
Can't do it.
There isn't any way in the world that the neighborhood's going to be very thrilled about that.
Well, I think they're not thrilled about it in any area, to be real honest.
Yeah.
But
So why do we,
we are doing it, and we are doing it with some success. There are some places that it's, at least we haven't heard a whole lot of pushback. And, you know, whether it makes it affordable, that's the million-dollar question, because so far, most of the things that we are trying for affordable housing is really not working, that I can see. Go ahead.
back to my question, is there something about Old Town that prevents you from being able to do that besides just public opinion?
Well, currently, only a duplex is allowed,
Yeah, duplex is the
max permitted.
maximum. So, right, so the cells for triplex and townhouse are blank, meaning those housing types are not permitted currently, and that goes back to my statement earlier that, you know, we need to probably look at changing the comprehensive plan for the Old Town future land use designation to talk about, you know.
And this might be something for us to, I don't know if we can make a recommendation that the planning committee have a conversation about this, about Old Town specifically, because it is treated differently throughout these development regulations. I think our sentiment is, why is it being treated differently? And maybe the planning committee can give us some insight into that. Maybe there's reasons that we're not aware of. Yes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Mr. Mills?
I was just trying to understand what was being said. I didn't.
My question was, does anybody that was on that committee live in Old Town, just for bias sake? Yes. Thank you for that answer. Yes, was the answer.
It would be a good idea to have some back and forth on that. In my mind, I separate the design, the exterior appearance from the other metrics, which is what drives me to try and equate it to either an R2A or an R3 type of quantification, while protecting the visual aspect of the district by the design standards.
I think if you drive through Old Town, you'll notice that there's some very modern homes in there that don't look like they're old. So I'm not sure that the design standards are maintaining a certain look and feel currently.
And I guess I understand what Mr. Ryan is saying, but I just want to speak up for the council. I know they work hard, and I would hope that it's not bias that makes these regulations different for Old Town, and I would like to believe that that's not the case. So just speaking up.
I just wanted to point out that there is a recommendation in the Housing Action Plan to look at the Old Town zone and to actually consider changing the zoning for a certain portion of it between, you know, the lower density and the central business district to kind of create more of a transition with potentially higher density housing within that area, and that was not one that was chosen to move forward this time around. And I don't know, I think it potentially could have been because of the potential controversy and not wanting to get bogged down in that at this point. I don't know that for sure, but that's kind of a guess. But I'm happy to, have that discussion and get some more feedback from the planning committee.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Shall we move to the next thing? So we're at 2.4.2. Looks like that one is already, we already talked about that, and that one is fine. 2.4.4, come back to this one, staff recommendation is complete. But I think you, did you do that one? I think you did.
So there are some potential adjustments. Staff did make a recommendation on this that instead of what the HAP was recommending, I think which was to not allow, I might be getting them mixed up now, but the staff's recommendation was to add a minimum density for lots that are greater than 6,000 square feet in the R4 zone, which would allow for a single-family home to be placed on a lot that's less than 6,000 square feet. If you're over 6,000 square feet, it would, at least a duplex would be required because that is our highest residential density designated zone. So wanting to make sure that the land that is in that very small area is used as efficiently as possible was the thought there. But there are some changes that we're working on between the comprehensive plan and the density ranges that are mentioned there for the future land use designations and the zoning that we kind of need to do a little more work on. And so that's why I come back to this when staff has a updated recommendation, so.
Okay.
I do see that on page 10 of 39, to use the convention that I think we've gravitated to, is laying out in matrix form that recommendation for the 15 dwelling units in the R4 zone as you just showed on the other matrix. But that's the only thing that's being reflected at this point.
Yeah.
The only question I would put into the hopper on that item as you consider to continue to work it is they've addressed in the R4, is there some similar minimum density that we should consider for instance, R3 or R3A? Why, is there something that makes this unique just to R4, that minimum density?
Just that it is it's the highest. There is no maximum density in the R4
Right.
zone, and it's just the highest density residential zone that there is. It's close to Commercial Avenue, Central Business District, and so it just makes sense to have the highest density housing in that area for multiple reasons.
So put the floor in there, it has to be at least 15
Yes.
to make sure it gets that additional
Right.
density.
And that same minimum density also, is what is generally seen to be supportive of transit. And so once you start achieving that level of density, hopefully, you start to see more, frequent, reliable bus service because there's enough people to support that service. So that's the kind of the hope with that. And then also in our the marine mixed use zone and maybe Central Business District, I guess I could just look, but we do have minimum density for a couple of our mixed use zones as well.
Bottom line, we
you.
don't want somebody buying property in the R4 zone and putting a big single-family home.
Yeah, exactly,
That would not meet the goals of that particular zone.
exactly.
So this one we talked about before, right? We talked about if I own a lot in R4, and now I'm not allowed to build what I want on it. So that's where I think you need to have a caveat that, you know, because there's a note in the recommendation column about consider updating applicability to apply only the creation of new lots. But my guess is most of R4 is already subdivided, so we're not creating new lots in R4. But you may have folks there that already own a lot that intend to build there, and now they can't. So my belief is there should be some sort of grandfather clause that if this takes effect, and I think it's reasonable, except for people that may already own in there and have plans to do something, or at least give them the ability, if they've invested in there, that they can move forward with a plan.
I actually agree with that. I circled that in my notes. With that grandfathering, or is for the creation of new lots. Like everything, I'm concerned always about the unintended consequences. But for what I understand now, I think that's a good thing to make it prospective rather than retroactive to any lots that already exist.
Sorry, are you saying for lots that are over 6,000 square feet in size right now? I guess that this new regulation of minimum density should not apply to those, to any lot that's over 6,000 square feet?
I thought I was agreeing with the recommendation from the planning department, saying that consider adding minimum density for some or all other zones based on density range for the applicable comp plan land use designation, retain maximum density standards, consider updating applicability to apply only to creation of new lots.
Sorry, where are you looking? I lost track.
We have too many page references, don't we?
He's in the chart.
Page 4 of 8, which is page 49 of 69 of our packet.
2.4.4, where density, update density standards.
Right here?
And then.
No,
on
he's on the chart that you made that shows where we are right now.
the strategy list for tracking recommendations.
Oh, okay.
The matrix has been
Sorry.
in use for a while.
Oh. See, I tried to make it easier, but I just added another document to confuse me myself.
There you go.
All right, thank you. Okay, so, yes, add a minimum density, consider adding minimum density for some or all other zones based on density range. Yes.
That,
Keep going, keep going.
Okay, so for the applicable comp plan land use designation, retain maximum density standards, consider updating applicability to apply only to creation of new lots.
that's what I was trying to endorse.
Correct,
And I-
right,
and I
okay,
think you
thank
were as
you.
well.
Well, my point is that if someone already owns a lot, even if it's R4 and it's greater than 6,000 feet, but they already own a lot there, they should be able to proceed as they see fit with that lot. If that lot were to change ownership, now you could apply the minimum density requirement to that. But if someone bought that in good faith, thinking they're gonna be able to build the house they want, and now you're pulling the rug out from under them as they're trying to do that, I think there needs to be, as you said, it needs to be not retroactive. Is that
I'm
right?
not, just thinking about how we would do that, we don't track change in sales or ownership, excuse me. I think one way to potentially do it, there's a concept called vesting. If somebody has a complete building permit application in to the city, they are vested to the rules and regulations that are in place at the time of their complete application. And so, you know, if this does go through the full process and ultimately get adopted, you know, there could be a pause on the effective date to give people time to submit a building permit application. But you know, just leaving it open forever, you know, that they're grandfathered to the older regulations would be, I'm not sure how we would accomplish that. Does that make sense? So if they have plans and they are working toward, you know, they've spent money on building plans because they want to build this single-family home on their 9,000 square foot lot in R4, then yes, absolutely, they should be able to, you know, go through with those plans. But if they've, you know, don't have any plans and haven't thought about it, you know, they're just holding on to the land and.
But they may have been thinking about it for years when they bought that lot, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's public record when a lot turns over, right? Any real estate transaction is public record, so it's pretty easy to find out when they bought that. So you're, you know, at least giving them some sort of window to do something, you know, is better than when this passes at the end of this year.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people buy lots with intentions of doing something, and once you've made that investment, and now they can't do that.
I take your point. The other thing is that, you know, not that they could not build, but they could build a duplex. They could build their, you know, their single family home exactly how they want it, but add a unit onto the back, you know, and they would be able to do that. It's just, you have to do at least 2 units.
Okay, so just getting us back on track here. So you've made some recommendations. It sounds like from Mr. Mills, he's endorsing it. I think Mr. McCombs is as well, the recommendations that you've put there, and I would be comfortable with it. But are you saying that there are more you need to look at it a little more to make recommendations?
I'm sorry. No, I think.
Are we done with 2.4.4 or no?
I think that the Planning Commission could make your recommendation, and I will have to go back and make sure that, you know, there aren't any other changes that we were looking at making.
Okay.
And I will let you know. I will bring that back to you.
Okay.
But we can move on.
So the 2 committee members are saying we're fine with the planning department's recommendation. Okay. So now we're on 2.4.5. And it looks like that one is good to go. 2.4.6, come back to this at the next meeting. And this is about the height bonus.
Yeah, so that was a note from our last meeting that we were going to come back to that.
Right.
So let me pull that up in the code.
I don't see it.
Did I skip it?
I think we-
Yeah. So considering increasing the size of small units.
What page are you on?
Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm in the strike-through underline version of the regulations 12 of 39, section 1942-050.
Oh. Oh, that's the 600 to 650.
Is that what we were talking about? Okay. Yeah. So yeah, so the 650 square feet just allows for some additional storage space per unit. And we've had some indication from, somebody that has done development. I think we did talk about this last time, but that, having that additional storage space was pretty important to the functionality of the units. He's found through experience. And so the 600 so basically this allowance is saying if you do a certain percentage of small units, so units that are no larger than 600 square feet in your multifamily development, you get to have some extra height. And that's because, we're getting more small units on the market, which has been identified as being needed. And so the 600 square foot was a number that was, suggested at some point in the past that we just landed on. There was nothing magical about 600 square feet. It was that, that's a pretty small unit, and that's what we need. So the 600 to 650, if it's going to result in a more functional unit and better, livability for the residents, in staff's opinion, didn't seem to be a big deal and would help in encouraging developers to build more small units. If that makes sense. Sorry for the rambling.
And Mr. Mills, you want to talk about what our conversation was about this one?
Been a while. My recollection was twofold. One, that it was my opinion that if that additional 50 feet was conditioned space as opposed to a segmented off area down in the parking area or in the garage, that seemed okay with me, as long as it was conditioned space and not a padlock storage area in the parking garage. The other one, which was a surprise to me, subsequent to our conversation, is that in the material that was provided in our packet today, my assumption that more modern elevator technology would make them more compact in terms of their vertical needs. Mm-hmm. The material provided by staff says new technology mounts mechanical equipment on top of the elevator cab, which increases the overrun above the roof level beyond that assumed by code. That was a new revelation to me. It seemed like it was counterintuitive, but I'm not an elevator expert, so if that's...
So the elevator conversation is 2.4.7, and our committee of two said, no, our community won't stand for more height. Yeah. And even 2 feet more height, I don't think is something our community would stand for. Would it increase density? I don't think so. Would it increase affordability? No, I don't think so. And would it be amenable to our community? I don't think so.
I disagree with you.
Okay, go for it.
And the reason I disagree with you is that the extra floor does allow for the small units, so it does increase the density. It does hopefully provide a less expensive unit than a 950 square foot unit. And I disagree with the 2 feet being unacceptable to the community. I mean, it's already 5 stories tall, or 4 stories tall. And at 50 feet, I don't think 52 feet makes a difference. And it's just the elevator. It's not the entire top of the building. So I think it actually does allow for all 3 of the things we're hoping for.
Okay. Anybody else? Yep.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So my question is, are we talking about 2 feet to the entire top of the building, or are we just talking, it says the penthouse, so I'm assuming that's the structure above the elevator where all the mechanical parts go, right?
Electronics and the mechanics for the elevator.
Okay. Does that sound about right?
That's the way it was done for Scabby.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
just the elevator
above the
penthouse and
shaft.
what's needed to screen
Okay.
that area, the mechanical equipment. Mhm. And there is some additional information about the new technology and how they are mounting the equipment on top of the cab. It allows for them to get rid of the machine room, which apparently is, takes up a bit of space. So it's kind of a trade-off.
Which we call a penthouse, which seems an odd name for it, but anyway. Mechanical room or penthouse? Penthouse sounds so much nicer.
Okay, Mr. Drutsky, you're kind of making me rethink.
Well, my apologies for combining 2.46
Yeah,
and 2.47. I didn't realize I was doing it at the time. But to really clarify my position on 2.4.6, the extra 50 feet, as long as it's conditioned space, I'm okay with. On 2.4.7, when you and I spoke weeks ago about this, my operating assumption was that the equipment was going to be becoming more compact as technology advanced, when in fact the designs for these size of elevators apparently has changed so that the equipment is mounted on the top. So my position on being against that additional is softened because of that new information.
okay. This is actually awesome to have a commission that's sitting here and really talking through and figuring it out. And you've convinced me. So I think we're okay with 2.4.6 and 2.4.7. Good job.
Yeah, great,
I think I
great
forgot to tell you I
discussion.
was going to build one of those apartment houses. No.
All right, where are we now?
Okay.
So are we on 2.5.1?
We made it there?
Yes.
I'm all glazed over by now.
This is Mr. Ryan and Mr. McComb's work.
Two 2.5.1, that's the definition of family?
Yes, sir.
Is there a state definition of family?
No, not that I'm aware of.
I think it's misleading, the way, if you look at the definition of family in the dictionary, typically those folks are related some way, and I'm not saying that people that all live in one place should be related. So I think the direction that you're going encompasses all, the community better, I think. But rather than using the word family, would you just call it a household, a single household home?
Here, Mr. McComb.
Oh,
There's something
okay.
that I put together, just under the definition of the end discussion.
Okay, hang on. Okay. So,
So for definition and discussion, there we go. I put together a sheet for that because underneath the HAP strategy, we had where it said family means one person or two or more related persons living together. The second one, where with the correction, was unrelated persons living together as a single nonprofit housekeeping unit. And 3, unrelated persons living together in a state-licensed adult family home pursuant of RCW 7127.010, and provider's family counting up to 6 persons not related to the providers living with them as one housekeeping unit for profit. And in the little thing I put together here, one was, well, let's start, well, what is the definition? What is the definition of family? And Oxford Dictionary has traditional family, a group consisting of 1 or 2 persons and their child or children living together as a unit. And from dictionary.com, because we have non-traditional family, a group of individuals not necessarily related by blood who share common interests, attitudes, or goals and are often lived together. For example, many hippie communes from the 1960s regarded themselves as families. And so then we have recommended clarifications on some of those. I have recommended, my recommendations on those was for one, related individuals, one or more persons living together in a single household or dwelling unit. Two, for that unrelated persons as that was recommended, unrelated individuals in a nonprofit setting. Unrelated persons living together as a single nonprofit union, such a nonprofit entity may be required to provide documentations of legal registration as a nonprofit organization. And there's also, that was a question as well. Is it that they have to be a documented nonprofit entity? And then number three, unrelated persons in a licensed home. Unrelated individuals living together in a state licensed adult family home pursuant of the RCW that we have in our document, where the provider's family may consist up to 6 individuals not related to the provider, but living together as a single household unit for profit. And so that's where I came up to clarify those. But I also, at the same time, as far as number 2 and number 3 go, there would be established individuals for point of contact. There being who's ahead of the nonprofit unit in case there's an issue with that home. You can generally contact who's ever accountable for the nonprofit. The same goes for unrelated persons in a licensed home. There is the licensed caregiver. If the authorities or community have any issues with such building, they are able to reach out to that individual who is in charge. So then when we get into the non-related, where do we find that accountability? And then that would be and my recommendation is to define that who is head of household and their accountability rules or requirements.
Mr. Ryan was kind enough to provide the thumb drive, so I pulled up his document that he's shared here on the screen.
So I'm probably the only one, but I'm confused. Oh, good. So the definition of family, the HAP plan says to amend the definition of family for consistency with state law. Ms. Grades, you said that there isn't a definition in state law?
There's not. There's only a state law that says that as a jurisdiction, we are not allowed to, we're not
allowed to limit unrelated persons.
Yeah. So except for occupant limits on group arrangements or short-term rentals or for health and safety provisions, the city is not allowed to regulate or limit the number of unrelated persons that may occupy a household or dwelling unit. So there's...
And so this is something that is required.
Mm-hmm.
A change is required, yes, to comply with the state law, correct?
Okay, but what are the changes that are required? That's what I'm not
So
clear.
I went off of the original HAP slide right here.
So the change would
She
be,
has it.
the required change would be, not,
For number 2, they had no more than 5 unrelated persons. We would be removing no more than 5, and then the rest
Right.
is just clarification on the verbiage.
okay.
Would you mind going right back to that?
Oh,
That
sorry.
you were just in?
This one?
Yeah. So, Mr. Ryan and Mr. McCombs, is the cross-out and underline acceptable to you or not acceptable?
That's the old I believe that's the old definition per the city, right?
The recommendation there, I believe, was for them to just strike out the other, but then that leaves things too open and too ambiguous.
So they struck out in red, and the new language, is this too open for you, the new language in green underlined there? One or more persons? It's a lot simpler.
My only question is, so our recommendations were with these other ones, but it wasn't to completely remove them, and as far as even number one, was not to remove them, so this way we had things more specific.
I see.
And to reduce ambiguity versus having everything more vague. You generally think that everybody can come to the common senses when things are simplified, but not always the fact.
Okay. So I think I'm clear that your team is recommending keeping the cross-out language, in fact, enhancing it. Is that right?
Mr. Ryan, is this, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
So I'm going along with the recommendations that were given to us underneath the HAP from our consulting firm here, and was just cleaning up a little bit of the language, and then adding or asking just for a little bit of specifications on when we start getting into larger unrelated persons living together on point of contact. So as a concern, because in a couple of the neighborhoods around here, we have where the individual who has several slightly vagrant individuals and slightly vagrant, not completely, but when that individual says, no, they can stay here, but they're not, they're free roaming like cats almost. And then when you go to say something, that individual's not liable for the things he has going on in his household because I got no control of that. So, but you invite it. So where's that? Where can we hold accountability there when you're allowing yourself as the unrelated peoples that you want to have on your premises?
The first place I ran into this was up in Bellingham when they decided to try and protect, when they tried to protect neighborhoods from a mass of college students. I'm not trying to be facetious, 7 guys moving into a 2-bedroom house and all their vehicles and everything else. And so they limited, I don't know if it's still that way up in Bellingham, but they limited it to certain neighborhoods right around the campus where you could have very high density in single-family houses. And they banned people from just filling up residential houses and their cars and their noise in residential neighborhoods. Again, crossing it out at 5, I guess that means it's unlimited?
There are, I believe, maximum occupancy requirements in the building codes, adopted building codes.
Okay.
And so those would regulate for safety as well.
Can you pull up the document, the city document with the HAP recommendation on it? Please.
Are you, sorry, too many documents?
I think this one.
This one, okay.
Yes.
'Cause
So for clarification, the green is what was recommended. That was the HAP recommendation?
No.
And the
No.
red was the previous? Or?
So yes, I made this confusing. So the HAP recommendation, I'll just pull it up. So 2.5.1.
Here, let me bring it over here on the screen. This was the one we went off originally.
All right,
We did our
2.5.1. So this is the original Housing Action Plan recommendation. So striking out the no more than 5, and then striking out number 4. Staff, in looking at this definition, seems unnecessarily complicated. And so that's why in the code draft. I made a little bit of a different recommendation to simplify. But, you know, it could go, it's the planning commission's purview to decide which one you like better.
I almost think you need to eliminate the word family from the code.
And that's something that was considered, because it's not necessary. I mean, it is necessary to have it there, but just because of some of the other sections of code that use that term.
So I think I would remove and replace that term with a different word like household. Because a household is made up of all of these things, right? But if you look at the traditional definition of family, those folks are generally related, right? So I think it's very confusing. We are using the term family, but we really don't mean what the definition means. So that's where I would suggest you just completely replace the word family with a different word that everybody would understand the context of. And as I thought about it, I thought household, so a single family home is typically a single household. You have a duplex, you have multiple households in that, right? You have one in each plex of the duplex.
So, one thing that we do have is in the AMC is that we do have definitions. So then if we said household, you need to go over to be able to open up that definition of a household, and what does household mean?
That's fair, and I think you could actually, put similar verbiage here, but when you say, but that would qualify as the household, but they're all living in the same structure, right? So,
Yeah, as long as we have it somewhere in there where, like I said, if you open up that definition, I don't know where they were planning on inserting this. Are they inserting this just into the AMC or into our Anacortes municipal codes and under the definitions, or is it? Oh, sorry about that.
So this is in the definitions section of the Anacortes Municipal Code. So that's where you would find it. So if we were to move forward with Mr. McComb's recommendation to use household instead, then that would also, we would strike this from the definition, or from the definitions section, and add household and define that. Am I understanding your concern? No.
Okay, so,
One other comment.
Okay.
Question.
Mr. Jutsky?
Is there a reason we have the unrelated persons living together in a state licensed adult family home? I mean, the fact that that's even lumped in this, I mean, that's a for-profit venture. It's basically a nursing facility with minimal nursing care.
Yeah.
The ones I've seen don't have a nurse on staff, which, but again, they provide care for elderly people. We call them adult family homes, but,
Yeah.
so I guess that's why it got thrown in this bucket.
I don't know, this has been, the definition's been the same since I've been here, and so I don't know the origins of, why it was felt that they needed to specify, for adult family homes. Adult family homes are regulated separately under group living, and so I'm not sure that it's necessary to include here.
I think it's in the wrong bucket.
Yes.
I mean, it's more like a commercial endeavor. I think all the ones I know are for profit. Maybe there's some church-run ones that aren't necessarily designed for profit.
Right.
But they're basically a nursing facility for seniors.
Yes.
So this was the HAP recommendation.
Okay, so I'm thinking that we've had a good conversation here, but we should probably move forward and bring this back with the wording of household, and bring back the proposal from the two of you with the word household in there, and see how that flies. Is that okay? Okay, so we're coming back to 2.5.1, but we're working on it. And I think there's a consensus here that we like that household instead of family. Okay, so
Fair
this
enough.
one comes back. Okay,
Sounds good.
we are on we're doing good, by the way, gentlemen. We're doing. Well, we are. We're moving along and having good conversation. So we're on 2.5.2, Design Standards Applicability. And this is Mr. Ryan and Mr. McCombs again. The Planning Department is recommending to make the changes that the HAP is recommending.
So my only question was on, this seemed reasonable to me. I wasn't sure, I think townhouse, did the standards apply for greater than 4 units on a townhouse?
Townhouse is defined underneath the Anacortes municipal codes as units up to 3, I believe. I have it in here somewhere. Let me check my notes.
I'm looking for the page.
No, right here.
2.5.3,
So-
page 22 of 39. Is that the one we're on?
So I want to say townhouses is defined in Anacortes Municipal Codes 19.43.010 G9E, I believe that is definition, a dwelling unit in a row of at least 3 such units in which each unit has its own front access to the outside. No unit is located over another unit, and each unit is separated from any other unit by 1 or more common walls. So that is Anacortes' current, according to what I found on the city pages. So 3.
Good job doing your homework.
I got hot links in here too.
So it's 3 or more, right? So
3, at least 3.
at least 3. And then the standard that we're talking about with 252 was related to the design standards for townhomes.
Mm-hmm. And that would be with frontages, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
For some reason, I'm not finding
I'm-
252.
I don't find it either.
2.2.
So 5.2 goes into, we should clarify 1961, 1962, which goes into HAP 2.5.3, which is 19.61.
Wait, whoa, woo. Hang on. So what, we're talking about 2.5.2, and we're trying to find that page somewhere.
So it's 30 of 39 in the code changes. And I can give you a little bit of background on this if you're interested. So the reason that this is proposed to be added in here is because townhouse development has its own development standards as a housing type. So small lot, single family, duplex, triplex, and townhouse development all have specific site and building design standards that are in 1943. And what staff was coming up against was some confusion when we were seeing new townhouse development applications come in, as to whether these block frontage standards and other standards within the project design requirements applied to townhouses, because they have their own separate requirements elsewhere. So it was kind of just trying to direct people, yes, they have their own special requirements, but block frontage standards are also applicable, and, dumpster service area screening requirements are as well. So it's more of kind of a cleanup where people were questioning, well, you have a definition for multifamily and you have a definition for townhouse. So I see this applicability section only applies to multifamily, and so townhouses were being left out. So it was just a point of confusion for applicants and development review staff that we wanted to tighten up.
Okay. So that one's okay with you
So,
guys?
yeah, I thought it was reasonable. So, but I guess my question was that it would include, those standards would still apply. For some reason, maybe looking at the definition of townhouse, or I don't remember the verbiage of the 252, but it would still apply if you had 4 or more units in a townhome. Those standards would still apply, because it almost looked like there was a loophole.
The 1943, so yeah,
It almost looked like there was a loophole if you had like greater than
So-
4.
Did you get
here's,
multifamily?
sorry for all the scrolling, I know that drives some people crazy. So here's 1943-070, the specific site and building design standards for townhouse development. And within this section, it has, special design standards for townhouses. It has, special setbacks, entries, facade transparency, garage setbacks, parking. It's got, a lot of the things that you would find in Division 6 for multifamily development here, but it's missing a couple of things. The service area standards for, garbage collection, and then the block frontage standards. So it's just making sure that we're pointing people to that correct section and making those requirements applicable to townhouses. And the reason that, I think the choice was made to separate out these design standards for these middle housing types was to make it easier for people to go through a site plan and permit review application process, because everything was right in one spot. Well, there were a couple of things that were overlooked, and so.
What would be your recommendations since you work directly with this?
That would be my recommendation, is to add that language in, making townhouse development, making block frontage standards applicable to townhouse development, as this is proposing to do.
I would support you on whatever, since you're the one who works with this on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's something that has come up, over the years as a point of confusion for staff and developers, so. Yeah.
Right, well, yeah, insert that. That would be lovely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So 2.5.2, we're rolling.
We're good, I think.
Oh, we're good.
I
Okay.
think I was confused just by seeing the definition of townhouse. So apologies for that. Thanks for clarifying. And then, 253.
2.5.3.
So we have the HAP recommendations.
And that is, you get a prize if you find the page. Oh, I get the prize. It's on page 22.
Thank
of
you.
39.
22.
Okay, you can have the prize too.
You guys got to split it.
Okay.
So
All right, team, what's your recommendation here?
I can add a little background to this one too, if, thank you. So this is also some more clarification because of the confusion on townhouse development and there being applicable standards in multiple locations. And so this is just cleaning that up and saying so we're in the townhouse section now. So it's pointing people back to the block frontage standards, which is where we just were, and saying, yes, that's applicable, and also to the setback table 1942-020. So we have block frontage standards and setback requirements, whichever one is greater applies.
So
So this isn't changing any standards, it's simply directing people to the location to look for
I'm-
setback requirements.
So I'm trying to remember, because like this has been a minute and things are moving around as we speak in the AMC, but I believe I had very similar to what was recommended by the HAP, but there were some changes in some of the AMC directions. They were moved around. I have to pull those links up. And
So in this draft, I just took what was recommended in the HAP verbatim. So it shouldn't be different.
because I'm thinking when I did my research on this, because I have in here applicability, and let me say, all undesignated block frontages in non-residential zones that are not designated are subject to the standards of this section. And then it's per 19.61.150, where property fronts onto multiple streets. And then we go into per AMC 19.61.030A2, which is what they have here by the recommendations, and that is for developments that front onto multiple streets, see provisions, and then we go into AMC 19.61.10150. And these block frontages are provided greater flexibility with regard to the design of planned and future development frontages projects regulated by the AMC. And I know I was playing around in there, chasing this, so this way, when an applicant comes in or somebody comes in, that everything that is asked here has a link, or they know where to find the rest of that language that would pertain to that requirement. But as I was hunting some of the stuff, numbers that were given to us originally in that HAP strategy, they were not where they were supposed to be.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. So subsequent to the HAP being adopted, there was an update to the development regulations numbering scheme. So specifically these design standard provisions, and it was mostly to make it easier to point people to the right code section and kind of like redo. So each housing type, small lot, duplex, triplex, and townhouse development now has its own section number, whereas before it was all under one section, A, B, C, D. And so the citations were, horrendously long, and you couldn't, hyperlink to that specific housing type. And so it was a cleanup action just to make it easier and give each housing type its own section. So I apologize for that. I should have mentioned that.
No, I had fun chasing it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I nerd out on this. This is fun stuff. But Libby, there's on the desktop, could you pull up my file, there we go.
Yeah.
And then scroll down to that, so this way you can see it. And as we come down to 2.5.3,
Okay.
and then you'll see this little cut and paste there, and then underneath it where it says B, and then you see my little mint green highlights. So that's the verbiage that I came up with after skating all around through the AMC. So that's what I just stated right there, where it says B, applicability, all undesignated block frontages. Very similar to the verbiage that was recommended by Makers, which was right above, and they just had slashed out with regards to design of the multifamily and non-residential development frontages. But like I said, as I was hunting through that, I was going, well, hold on, now we're dancing. And for those people that don't hunt or play around with the codes, it was very all over the place. So I was wondering if that, or my recommendation is that we put those in there so this way these people can follow some of the direction that's, and just be alone. I mean, it's muddy either way.
Okay, so your recommendation is to take the HAP recommendation and add whatever you have, looks like
the
bright
addition-
blue to me, but,
Yeah, the additional AMCs, and then make the corrections of the ones that weren't there, or, you know, and a little bit of cleaning up.
okay.
Like I said, I don't know if anything's changed since October, because I do have a couple links that aren't working anymore. I mean, I could chase that later, but,
So the recommendation of 2.5.3 is what exactly?
well, Makers has striking the red line that we see there. And then, but I mean, as I was trying to,
We're talking about 2.5.3?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. So,
I mean, I wish this was a lot closer to October than where I really had the method of my madness at the time.
yeah,
Well,
it gets confusing when
just-
numbers change on you. But
Just for the sake of the audience, the great audience, Mr. Ryan, I'm sitting next to Mr. Ryan, who has, besides the screen provided, he has 2 computers open at the same time. You definitely win the prize.
Tell that to my 4th grade teacher.
I'm just, again, wanting to make sure that, are we clear with what changes Mr. Ryan is recommending?
I think for the 2.5.3, are you recommending just adding this language that's highlighted in blue to the end of what?
Yeah, however, what my rendition was there as far as B, where the box above, obviously, that was Makers.
Yeah.
And then applying, you know, some of their verbiage, but then adding some of the, or at least references to some of the additional AMCs, the additional municipal codes, I mean.
So just cross-references to
Yes, ma'am.
the other applicable sections?
Yes, and then, you know, I definitely would love to recheck those since things have, like I said, have been bouncing around. And
Okay.
verify that those are still current, because when we get down, obviously you see my red, unable to locate 19.43.10 G4, because it actually now stops at B, where it used to stop at D in October. So things are.
Yeah, so again, that was part of the, there was an ordinance that did some renumbering of these sections just to make it easier for referencing, and that messed up some of the, cross-referencing with the HAP, so.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful for you to come in and we could take a look at the code and we could make sure that it is?
If you have any, yeah, I would love to. If you have any, direction going like, well, actually, we moved it over to here because, I mean, now
Yeah.
it's just something that, I was unable to answer, or I can't ask anybody up here on the council to go, hey, well, anybody know where that might be?
Yeah, we can walk, if you want to come in, we can go through it and I can show you how things changed and maybe that'll help.
Yeah, that'd be great. I appreciate that.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so I'm making a note on 2.5.3. Mr. Ryan's going to meet with Ms. Grage, and for the sake of the rest of us, we'll see whatever the cleaned up total, whatever it is, okay?
Thank you.
All right. Let's go to 2.5.4. Usable residential open space.
Libby, when we're talking about indoor recreational leisure space,
Sorry?
when we're talking about indoor leisure and recreation space, can you give an example of what that looks like?
Bowling alley.
Sure, 2.5. Let me find what we're talking about first. Okay, here. So this section. Okay, so internal open space. So I'm going to get to the answer to your question. I just have to start from the beginning.
That's probably what I need.
Yeah, me too. These provisions apply to, all new multifamily development and mixed-use development that has residential as a component. And by saying internal open space, that doesn't necessarily mean it's inside the building. It just means that it's on the site. The site contains some sort of open space that complies with all of the standards that follow here underneath. The open space can be, so the minimum open space is based on the number of bedrooms in each dwelling unit. So 100 square feet per dwelling unit for a studio or one bedroom. So you take that quantity and multiply it by the number of units and you get your total open space that's required to be provided for the development. So then when we move down here, there are different ways that you can provide the open space. You can do shared open space that's outside that everybody uses. You can do ground level, private open space. You can do balconies, common indoor recreation areas, which is what you were asking about. So I think, something like a lounge area for, people to hang out, play games, a pool room, things like that could be examples. We haven't seen any of that. Nobody's used that provision yet, so I can't give you an example locally, but.
But that would be required once this is enacted, right?
No. So the shared, the open space can be, it's a choice by the developer how they want to provide the minimum amount of open space, and they can choose to provide it in any of these ways. So if they choose to provide indoor recreation space, then this would apply, the minimum dimensional standards.
So they have a minimum square footage that they have to meet based on the size of the building and the size of the spaces, right?
Yeah, they have, sorry.
Go ahead. So they can break that up into separate places where they're doing that?
They can, yeah.
Okay, and so the 250-foot minimum or square foot minimum, that would just apply to a portion of that, which would be indoors for a recreational lounge area, right?
Right.
Okay.
So I think what the concern was that, we'd end up with potentially, people providing leftover spaces that were long and narrow, or, things that weren't really functional for the people that would actually use them. And so this is just, I think, trying to avoid that situation, provide a little more standard.
Okay, I think that's really reasonable. Actually, I looked up how much space do you need for a pool table? And you need about 25, or you need about a 250 square foot space for that. So like for a 7 or 8 foot pool table. So I think that amount of space is reasonable. What were you going to say, Paul?
Oh, so they were giving us, like, they didn't give us the information here, but as we come up to the AMC, because they were just asking us to insert some stuff, and I was just reviewing this after, like I said, several months, and that's fine. I think I like what the recommendations was.
So as I look at the verbiage here, the green, was that the makers, was that their recommendation?
Yes.
That was?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so can we go, I think before, so I kind of launched into the internal side of that. Can we look at, I think there was an open space standard referencing no open space required as long as there's an entry door within 250 feet of a park.
Right.
You get a percentage, don't you, on that one? Multiple family development adjacent to parks within 250 feet may qualify for a 33% reduction to usable open space. And the required open space may be provided in a combination of ways.
So the thought here was that if your development is very nearby an existing park, public park, that residents, have easy access to, then maybe you don't have to provide all of the required open space on your site, because they're probably more likely to use the park if they're in a easy walking distance. And so this would, just reduce the total amount of open space, potentially allowing for maybe another dwelling unit, or, making some additional space for other use.
Okay. Actually, I think that's pretty reasonable as well. And then let's see, I had a comment about the roof decks. And I think the roof decks, I think it was 50% of the open space could be on a shared roof deck. Is that correct?
Yeah, so
Okay.
Does that go towards the indoor as well?
So the recommendation from the HAP was to, I'm going to have to refresh my memory on this one, remove the difference in applicability between single-purpose multifamily and mixed use to allow intermediate level roof decks and to ensure access is available.
Where are we at? We are in 254.
So, okay, so there's that note there talks about up to 100% of the internal open space with a shared roof deck, right? Whereas I think what's in the HAP recommendation was 50%.
Right.
Okay, I really like the 50%. I don't think 100% on a shared roof deck is.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I think that it's more reasonable at 50%. And I guess my thought, I'm thinking about, single parents with kids that need to get outside. And if it's only up on a roof deck, I don't see that as being always as accessible, right? So I like the 50%.
This is for you.
Oh.
And so what I did here, this is just me writing the sentences out with what the HAP requested of us. So I mean, just something so you can see where my nugget is spinning.
Okay, so
But that was everything.
I think I'm hearing from the McCombs and Ryan team that 2.5.4 is fine with the HAP recommendations. I do have a question before we move on to that, and it's truly just a question on page 32 of 39. where it says usable residential open space must be provided as follows, right there, that chart. I'm just curious why permanent supportive housing doesn't get some open space.
Yeah, and it will. That kind of goes in line with the earlier staff suggested coming back to, where permanent supportive housing is permitted, because there's state law and new guidance out from Commerce on developing regulations for that type of housing. And so I didn't put anything in there right now because I plan to provide that recommendation with the rest of the language for permanent supportive housing types.
Okay. Okay, so 2.5.4, we're going to say is fine for now with the HAP recommendations, understanding that that will also change. But for now, it's okay.
Yeah, that's where I agree with Madam Chair here, because that's where I said clarification needed in my notes, because it was
Okay.
not enough information.
Okay, so it's 8:15. Are we okay, gentlemen, going for a little longer? A little bit longer, we're slogging through here. We're going to get here eventually. How about 2.5.5?
I concurred with the language in 2.5.5 in the recommendation.
And Mr. Ryan?
I think let's see. Their action is they wanted us to fine tune usable, provide more consistency between open spaces. And I think I just said additional planning needed, and I had a link to some of the residential unit. So, yeah, I'm down with it.
Okay, 2.5.5. That was a quick one. All right, how about 2.5.6? Parking lot landscaping.
Can we bring that one up so we can see the?
This one we need to look at, okay?
Yeah, I think I concurred for my records with the HAP recommendations. The only thing, and if you look at my notes, I didn't know how much work you already had did it. I just typed it out, so it was ready to copy and paste, but.
Okay, I'm looking for it. 2.5.6.
There it is.
I think we're reducing the amount of landscaping required on this one.
Yeah, so we went from 10 to 7.
Yeah, reducing the
There again, I just inserted the.
What page are
dimension.
you on?
Sorry, I'm on the last page, 39 of 39.
Okay.
So I thought that the A was reasonable because it simplifies the code, right? Makes it easy. You don't have to do math in public. I guess I hate to give away landscaping and dirt to pavement. So my thought was for the B was to maintain it as it is at 10 feet.
Is that okay with you, Mr. Ryan?
I don't have too much on it. I think it's kind of one of those, if it's one of those where they really need a foot here or there, I'm sure that discussion can be taken up with the building department. But yeah, as a rule of thumb, I will concur.
Okay, so 2.5.6, A, or the development regulation A is fine, that change is fine. 2.5.6B is, the recommendation here is to make it leave it at 10 and don't change it to 5. And that would probably answer our number 3 question about being agreeable to the community.
I do have a little bit of background if I could.
Sure.
Could add. Yeah, so the type C landscaping, at least 10, so for A, the type C landscaping at least, typically it would be 10 feet wide, going down to 7.5 feet, or deep, excuse me. We were seeing a lot of departure requests from applicants for this one, because when you have you're proposing a parking lot on the public street, the landscaping requirement is measured from the property line, not the sidewalk or the street. And typically in Anacortes, we have very wide right-of-ways. So a lot of times there will be, 15 feet between the property line and the sidewalk or the street. So there's a lot of room to provide landscaping. So requiring the full 10 feet is just, eating into the area that is developable when you could meet the purpose of the landscape buffer screening by adding a little more landscaping in the right-of-way. Or, so there were a lot of departures being requested where they had to go through extra process, just to achieve the same result.
Would that go good if we added some language in there that says it may include right-of-way?
I think there might be.
To get that 10?
Or split the difference
Yeah, that could
between
be-
the 10 and the 5.
Yeah,
That
5
could be
on
a-
right-of-way, 5 on, the private property or whatever. It's, if we add some language, so we still have a buffer zone, but we can gain that number by migrating it one way or another.
Yeah, that could be a good consideration. Sometimes, it varies how much space is between the sidewalk and the property line, and sometimes you might, there might not be, you might want that full right-of-way width for other street improvements, and so it might not make sense to do it in some cases. So it seems reasonable to keep it flexible and based on the site context, allow for some variation there.
Okay, so on 2.5.6, can we ask the planning department to come back with some modified language just for that one little section, B?
You down with that?
A,
Does that sound fine?
to section A?
No, B.
Oh, to keep it at 10 feet, okay. And then this is, sorry, I wanted to give a little more on this one, if that's okay.
Okay?
So this is a requirement for, think about for example, a project on an alley where they're providing parking that comes straight off of the alley, so they're backing into the alley, perpendicular to the alley. Right now, the way that this code is written, you would have to have a 10-foot landscape strip on this side of your parking off the alley and a 10-foot landscape strip on this side. And so that's 20 feet of landscaping that, potentially a fence or, a more dense type landscape buffer could achieve the same purpose in less space. And so that was kind of the thought with, reducing that minimum requirement from 10 to 5. So I just wanted to give that perspective. It's 10 feet is a lot of space when you're talking about trying to meet parking requirements for a new development.
You want to come back to that, gentlemen?
I don't need to. I understand. I guess I understand what you're saying. I just think we're going to pave the entire city. So I think there, there's places where we personally I don't think we want to. I think we need plants and dirt in the city. So if we're reducing all of our all of our standards and setbacks and runoff areas, I think, I think we need to maintain some of those. So,
And Ms. Gray, since you deal with it, what is your, you kind of said we need more space, we need,
My,
because I mean, it's something, it's one of those tasks you get given, and like, how are you supposed to solve for this?
yeah, I mean, I just think about, what the purpose is of that landscaping, and it's to provide some screening or buffer of parking areas from adjacent properties. And so if you're able to accomplish that in a smaller area using different methods, then, in my opinion, there should be some flexibility there. That's my opinion.
I'm a little confused because this says internal lot lines, and when I envisioned internal lot lines, I wasn't thinking an alley being the lot line. That would be very different than two property owners sharing a property line, and the 5 foot isn't very much if I'm the guy who's watching somebody put in a parking lot and a 5 foot buffer.
Yeah.
So again, I think,
I wouldn't see it on the alley.
I'm sorry?
They said, in Anacortes, coming down where we got some of the parking in the rear alleys, like I don't have any envision that there would be landscaping as we try to make that right out of the alley.
I happened to drive by the new, I guess, childcare or daycare that's going on D Avenue, the old nursery, and there is an alleyway on the south side of that property. And it does look like a very large buffer there, but that's, a good part of that is the alley. But again, I think that's a different standard than two property owners sharing a fence line or a property line, and a concern about 5 feet isn't very much of a buffer. Yeah, I understand why the guy developing the property wants all the parking space he can have and minimizes landscaping, but the guy who lives next door to that may not find that near as attractive. Number one, it limits what kind of shrubs, bushes, and trees can be planted in that smaller area too for the screening process.
Everybody here has a say.
Okay, so what I'm hearing for 2.5.6 is that the HAP recommendations for A is fine, and the HAP recommendations for B is that they would prefer to leave it as it is. Correct?
I'm not sure we've reached a consensus on B, but I think there's definitely, there's people who would prefer to see it stay the way it is.
Okay.
Or at the very least, be the same as A, which is 7.5 feet.
Okay.
It's a compromise.
We're going with 7.5?
Go 7.5.
Okay.
Squeak each
Wait.
way.
Let Mr. Mills speak. What do you say?
I was going to wax philosophical. You kind of half jokingly said, we'll split the difference and do 7.5. As we're going through this in a bigger picture view, one of the themes that's been brought to us by staff is doing things by right rather than by going through an elaborate process. To encourage investment, simplifying and clarifying is also an attribute that will encourage investment. Mm-hmm. And by having this 7.5 commonality, that's a small piece of simplifying. I don't have to look, is it 7.5 feet? Is it 10 feet? What is it? So not from a subject of compromise, but from just not over-engineering things, having them the same.
All right, so I'm hearing, I think, a
7.5,
consensus for 7.5 on B. How about that?
I'll concur.
Okay. And then we can put that one to bed. And I might be putting myself to bed pretty soon, so let's see. What else do we have? We have still too many to do.
2.5.
I think we have two more.
You think you can get through the two more really quick?
Yeah, we got 2.5.6. We'll go to 2.5.7,
Okay?
and that's service areas and mechanical equipment. And I know I said accept corrections above. And for the first one, and for the trash collection areas, I said open to discussion.
I had no issues with the, word 257, I had no issues with that.
Somebody have a page number?
I was hoping you would come up with it.
I'm still using the original slide you gave us.
It's not quite in order.
So
They're still going strong down there.
so they said right here, trash, so the second one was trash collection areas must include roofs or overhead weather protection.
We're looking for 2.5.7. Where is it? What?
5.7, service area, okay. That's in,
There it is, right there. Service areas and mechanical equipment.
yeah.
The printer ate that page. Yeah, it's I think originally it was trash collection areas must include roofs or overhead weather protection and must meet required stormwater standards. Drainage must be designed to meet applicable NPDES standards. And as far as roofs, overheads like that, I don't want to be the one to make any calls on that. I mean, I think everything looks cozy and clean. And, I don't know what happened to the seagulls in town where they used to shred stuff everywhere. I haven't seen them around, but
Oh, they're
There's a falcon coming.
but but it does rain a lot. So I mean, I wanted to leave that open to the floor on what their take might be on that aspect as far as the locations, related service areas, mechanical equipment. I always accept corrections and agreeing with the HAP. Is that what you were with the HAP?
Okay, so I haven't found it.
it looks like I may have missed that one and
Okay.
not gotten it in the code, so I'll fix that.
Yeah, I think it mostly cleans up some kind of service areas. It just makes it look better. But still, I think allows access to those areas, like say for large trucks that would be servicing those. I think I did this in October, but it seemed reasonable to me at the time, so I'd be.
Okay, we're going to say 2.5.7 is okay per the HAP recommendations, even though,
I will add that into the next draft.
This is you, right? Right on, good.
are you ready to do 2.5.8, or are we ready to dismiss?
This is
No, you've got three more.
This is the last one. I think this is the last one I have comments on, so if we get through this, I'll stop.
Okay, you promise? Okay.
So-
2.5.8, let's find the page.
35 of 39.
Yeah, I agree with 5.7, 5.8, which was fine-tune building assignment standards.
Okay. Oh,
I think
Sure
I,
seems like we're setting the stage for the MJB property design.
I'm sorry, what?
It seems like we're setting the stage for the MJB designers with a lot of this stuff. Design for multifamily entryway.
I don't know about that. I know there are, MJB did request multiple development regulation amendments that are not reflected in here that we'll be talking about later.
I imagine they want them to be tougher and more expensive.
yeah.
So yeah, those aren't reflected in this. We tried to just keep this to the Housing Action Plan recommendations.
so I think most of these are aesthetic, kind of make the make a block kind of look consistent. And, so you talk about the windows, they're similar and everything flows and it looks better. So I thought that was reasonable. The awnings, similar weather protection, it makes, it's more walkable to be on the sidewalk. So absolutely, I think pertains to our area. Vertical columns and piers, and just again, it makes it more aesthetically pleasing. People are going to want to come downtown, right, and hang out. And so I think all of those were good. There's nothing in there about roof lines, building entries. Yeah, it's kind of a minor wording change there, but
Yeah.
So 2.5.8 is fine with the changes. How about 2.5.9? Right underneath it.
Agreed to omitting red line is my notes.
I agreed with those changes.
Okay. And how about 2.5.10, blank walls?
I concurred with the blank walls.
I had one minor correction in some of the verbiage, and I think that is when it goes, individual outdoor spaces or internal walkways are prohibited methods to treat blank walls, and I think changing prohibited to more code language of the word not permissible instead of prohibited. But just because that is not permissible or permissible are standard terms in the building codes versus prohibited. Just trying to stick with consistent verbiage.
Okay. Okay, so 2.5.10, take the HAP language, except substitute the word prohibited and insert instead
Not permissible.
not permissible. I think prohibited makes more sense, but whatever.
So there was one area in the design standards that talked about metal screening material, perforated metal screening material. I can't find it. But
That doesn't,
I thought it was in 253, but I didn't see it in 253, and then I thought it was in 258.
There was some about some screening somewhere.
I might have missed that one as well.
So I guess my comment would be, so there was, I think it was, the change was to remove perforated metal material as a screening material. And I looked around and I saw some really good applications of perforated metal used as a screening material.
I thought we were asking to allow it to be used again? Or were we asking to remove it?
No, I thought it was being removed. And it may have been 257, because talking about service areas and mechanical areas where you're putting up screening around, say,
Yeah, 'cause-
dumpsters or garbage cans or things like that.
Yeah, because corrugated metal now is a high design for some of these modern homes as when they're using multiple exterior materials. And it looks pretty darn cool when used right.
I think there's some good applications of different metals and patterns that could be used, but they would, again, you would need some design standards applied so that you're not doing things that don't look good.
Libby, can we bring that back?
Yes, it looks like I just totally skipped 2.5.7 and getting it into the draft.
Okay.
So I'll add that and we can
Okay.
come back to it.
Okay. That leaves for next time.
Right here, under subsection E2, consider removing the prohibition on perforated metal as a rooftop equipment screening material, since it's cost-effective and a variety of design options. So,
What are you quoting?
right here, underneath the original HAP slides that we had, under
2.5.7.
2.5.7.
Okay.
And we get into past the collection points. For rooftop equipment, all screening devices must be well integrated into architectural design through such elements as parapet walls, false roofs, roof wells. I don't even know what that next word is.
That's okay. We're going to bring that back next time.
Okay,
So
great, great.
We're
And-
good.
And we were just going to agree with what the HAP had, which was slash, what was it?
Okay. So we almost met our goal. We've got, and Mr. Courier isn't here, so Courier and Mills, you will be up to bat first with 2.6.1, 2.6.3, and 4.3.2. And then we'll come back to any of the cleanup ones that we need to finish up. But we're getting close. So, good job.
Yeah, I
That'll
would-
save some brain power I need.
We could, finish up maybe those sections at the next meeting with the public hearing on capital facilities element. I think that would make sense and be a
Yeah.
good amount of time.
Okay. And I'm just moving us now on item 6C is Planning Commission Rules of Procedure discussion. This is whether to add 35A as part of our charter or not, and we don't have enough people here to make the change even if we want to, so let's just skip it till next time, and we can look at that again next time. Item 7 is Planning Department update. Do we have a Planning Department update?
I don't have a planning department update. I'm sure John will give you a long update next time.
Okay. We have, I talked to Mr. McCombs. Mr. McCombs and I attended a planning committee meeting, and just a sentence or two about that meeting.
Yeah, we attended the planning committee meeting of the city council and discussing transportation plans, so the Skagit Transit. So talking about bus planning, and then as well as they were discussing a proposal for a housing for the organization that provides housing. What's the word?
The Family Center.
The Family Center housing. They were granted some property and looking at the best way to use that property, so.
Great. And we appreciated just being invited. That was helpful and good.
It was good to see their process.
Yes, was.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Mills.
Just, the city attorney has advised that those planning committee meetings are open to the public.
Yes.
The only thing we would have to be aware of is that as commissioners, if a quorum, if I think the number is 3 or more of us were to show up, that could be an issue, or is it 4? But we can't have a quorum there, but
Yeah.
we and any member of the public is eligible to attend those meetings.
Thank you for that. Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Seeing and hearing nothing, we are adjourned at 8:43.